children only want screens because that's what we give them. If we give them an alternative, they're happy.
Today, GSTV had an amazing interview with Dolores Dempsey and a visit to the renowned Mountmellick Museum. She is a master craftsperson with 40 years experience teaching and designing and creating unique pieces of Mountmellick embroidery.
Complain that younger people aren't doing these crafts. Why aren't they doing them? It's because we're not. The ladies of Mountmellick have been stitching for the last 200 years doing this form of embroidery. It's deeply ingrained into the local community here, and it's something that people of the town are very, very proud of. You don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've come from.
Exactly.
So you need to know the route.
Welcome to GSTV, the home of community impact stories, where we grow, we inspire, and we make impact one step at a time. All right. Now, today GSTV had an amazing interview with Dolores Dempsey and a visit to the renowned Mountmellick Museum. So this is one of the first in our series of searching for your heritage and how it impacts our interaction in the community. All right. So who's Dolores? Dolores Dempsey lives in Mountmellick in the heart of Ireland. She is a master craftsperson with 40 years experience teaching and designing and creating unique pieces of Mountmellick embroidery. Mountmellick embroidery is a white-on-white work that is entirely Irish in origin and design dated from early 19th century. So it consists of bold design local flora and fauna work on white satin jeans fabric with white thread, cotton thread. It's a part of national inventory intangible cultural heritage in Ireland, and so Dolores is really passionate about keeping this this heritage for future generations. So she also delivers a lot of classes and workshops around the country, and mostly in Mountmellick. She has collaborated with various designers, and she also worked with the Mountmellick yarn bumper to create unique pieces to showcase the diversity of the embroidery. And one other things, did you know that Mountmellick was considered the Manchester of Ireland, which means the second big city of Ireland? Amazing, right? Considering how small it is now, this is really impressive. Stay tuned as Dolores walks us through about this amazing heritage and how it was the most important part of Irish heritage from the 19th century. Hi, Dolores, how are you? Welcome to the GSTV today. I first want to say thank you for your patience so far. We had quite an interesting morning, and I'm glad that you were able to meet with us today. What we're trying to do here, we're trying to talk about heritage and also impact in the community. That's why we are GSTV. And one of the things that we're trying to achieve is to empower people to be inspired by what's happening around them. All right. And this year I've been thinking a lot about heritage, about the importance of identity. You hear a lot of expression like, I'm from here, or there's a bit of a rise on a little bit of negativity where people say, this is our home. And so there's a bit of sense of heritage or an identity that grows around the world today in a way that people are even communicating their frustration, especially like, for example, immigration or migration or whatever you call it, right? And that got me thinking. I'm like, okay, we need to talk about it, the heritage, what it is. And one of the things that we find out is that the activities that people do around the community, that's what brings them into that sense of identity. This is who you are. So that's why we're here today. We talk about the Mountmellick embroidery, which is quite well known, and I'm going to let you talk about it. But before we go in there, I was told that you are the amazing person behind the whole work and how it's been spread around the county and even nationwide, right? So, and I wanted to hear about Dolores and find out who is this amazing Dolores who's doing a lot of work with an art that is probably not popular anymore, isn't it? But still it's the core and the heart of identity of who we are here in Mountmellick, or even in Laois, or even in Ireland, right? So tell me a little bit about yourself and how did you get into this, and also where are you from, really, right?
Well, thanks, Aileen. Where do I start? I suppose going back, I'm the second youngest of 9 children.
Yeah.
My parents moved to Mountmellick in the 1950s, and so I was born here. And my father died when I was 1 year old. So my mother had 9 children to bring up on her own. And the community in Mountmellick were very, very good to her. So she always said, where there's a will, there's a way. So she had to adapt and be, I suppose, very inventive in what she did. So she instilled in all of us an independence. So be independent, learn how to sew, learn how to look after yourself so that you don't have to be dependent if anything ever happened in your life.
Yeah.
So she taught me how to knit, how to sew. And when I went to school, part of the curriculum in school back then was sewing and needlework, knitting, crochet, which I learnt in school as well.
Yeah.
So I had a love of handcrafts. I always enjoyed doing them, and she fostered that in me. So when I was in 4th class, our nun at the time, Sister Teresa Margaret, was reviving Mountmellick embroidery.
Okay.
And she started to teach us. So my first piece of Mountmellick embroidery was when I was 9. But I didn't do it again until I was in my 20s. And I was married, had small children, and television back then wasn't as good as it is now. So my husband was big into sport, so I would have spent a lot of time in the evenings on my own. So my mother bought me the Mountmellick embroidery book that had been published back then in 1985, and some fabric and thread. And that started me off on my love of it again. I joined the classes with Sister Teresa Margaret. And over the years, it started to get so popular. She encouraged us to start a class here in the Mountmellick Development Association. So after a few years of that running, myself and Margaret Gorman, another stitcher who passed away recently, a good friend, we continued the class here, which is still going in the same format since then. So it's a drop-in class. People turn up on a Tuesday morning or Tuesday evening and we teach. I wouldn't say I'm the person driving it all. There's a lot of ladies around that are teaching and are doing the embroidery. So what we try to do is encourage people just to stitch, to keep it. It's a living craft.
Yeah.
And if people stop stitching, that's what happens. It dies off. So coming up to this interview, I was asking the stitchers that attend my class, what do they get from the embroidery? What do they feel? And most of them are saying it's a social occasion. A lot of them are good at stitching, but they come to the class just for the company, to look at what other people are doing and the motivation to stay stitching. Because what happens if you're sitting at home, you might do it for one night and then you put it away and it goes into under the bed or under the chair. So if you come to the class, you might stitch for one more night and then you mightn't do it till you come back to the class again. So it's also encouragement. And they feel it grounds them. So the class is for 2 hours. So people feel if they've stitched for 2 hours, they've switched off. I've been teaching it since then, and I've also done commissioned work. I've done work for myself. I've travelled to other areas and I've done workshops there, delivered it to overseas visitors that have come to the museum and around the country as well. So in whatever way that it can be promoted and encouraged. So it makes people I suppose it makes people feel good.
I like the feeling side of what you say and how it brings you guys together to just kind of even socialize, isn't it? Yeah. But what we don't talk about really, from what we saw this morning looking around the museum, which we're going to address in a few minutes, is how detailed it is. So it's very detailed, the art of embroidery. Can you tell us a little bit about the artistic part of it, how it takes a lot of details, isn't it?
Yes, well, the artistic part of it is, what we work on is a satin jean fabric.
Okay.
And so it's a natural fabric and with natural cotton thread. So once you have your design, which would be basic floral design, so it's taken from the local flora and fauna. So we would use a lot of blackberry, wild rose, grasses, lilies, things like that, those plants that are growing in the area, violas.
Yeah.
So once you have your pattern on your fabric, the stitches we use are normal embroidery stitches, but you have freehand put whatever stitch you like wherever you like. So your artistic element then comes into it. So once you have learnt the basic stitches, you can then complete a piece.
Okay.
So it is fine embroidery, but the needle that we use is quite a large needle with a large eye in it, which is a problem. A lot of people would have a problem with conventional embroidery because the threads are so fine and they say, oh, we can't see it, or we're not very good with colour, choosing colours. But the fact that this is white on white gives you the element of you design with the stitch rather than with colour. I would have always had a problem with colour if I was given the choice myself on what colour looks well, what colours blend well, whereas with this I have freehand to do whatever stitch I like to enhance the design that way.
So you use purely white.
Yes.
So this is what you do. But there's obviously there's other forms of different people using different colors. Like earlier we looked at the map, for example, of Europe. Someone used different, like brown and isn't it? So
but that's not Mountmellick. Mountmellick has to be white on white.
Okay.
But other forms of embroidery would have colour in them.
Yeah. Is there a reason why Mountmellick chose white on white, or was it because it was easier for you guys, or?
The reason was it was started in the early 1800s.
Okay.
In Mountmellick, where it was a very large Quaker settlement. So the Quakers didn't wear lace, and lace was having a revival around the world at the time. They didn't show their wealth. The fabric was being produced here for industrial use, and the threads. What the ladies here at the time did, they drew from the local flora and fauna. They used the fabric and thread that was available to them locally. Okay. And they embroidered household items.
Oh, wow.
So, and white was pure. So, and it's timeless. So it hasn't aged over the years,
I find white and maintaining white clothes at home is
I suppose they didn't wear them.
Yeah, exactly. Because most people they mostly did the embroidery for like the mat, the tablecloths, and the bedding and everything. And I remember when we were young, when you had those little pieces on the sofa, and your mother would be like, "Don't put your hair there, don't touch." Yeah, it was always.
But also, it's because it's worked on jean, which is what your jeans are. Your denim jeans are. Yeah, the same style fabric. Okay, it's hard wearing, so that's why they used it. It can be washed. Yeah, and it actually improves with washing.
Okay, and you mentioned when we had a conversation that you go to the schools. Yeah, so how do you? What? Tell me a little bit about how you.
So to try and keep the interest there and to encourage younger people to do it, a group of us volunteer and go into the local primary schools, and we teach the children in 6th class. So we go in in the spring, we go in for 6 weeks. So 1 hour a week for 6 weeks, and we choose Friday afternoon. So it's the last class of the week. Okay. So the girls are all relaxed, and this is a time out for them. So what we tell them is it's old-fashioned mindfulness, that this is their time out, this is a hobby, it's to relax and it's to enjoy. So we teach them enough stitches for them to be able to complete a piece. Okay. So, and then I take them home and wash them and finish them off and bring them back into them then. So they have a piece of completed work after 6 weeks.
After 6 weeks, yeah.
So we tell them it's a crash course. So you've done a crash course, you've got enough stitches to complete a piece, and it's part of your local heritage.
Yeah. And I find very fascinating when you say the girls.
Yes.
Because I think from time to time it's always been something that women are doing, right? Yes. But do you welcome men, or do you find that something that is exclusive to the female gender? What? It's or is it just it just became known for women? Is it? No? Yeah.
Well, at the moment we teach girls because it's an all-girls school. Oh, okay. But I also go into another local primary school which is mixed, and both boys and girls do it there.
And they do it, yeah.
And they do it.
Nice.
There's no problem.
Okay.
I think we give boys the hang-ups about doing different things. Yeah. So, like when embroidery started first, it was an exclusive men. That would have done it. Yeah. So over the years, then it changed to women.
To women, yeah.
So boys, I find boys, if you give them a practical reason for doing it, you know, they're developing their fine motor skills, that if they want to go on into electrics or to be a surgeon, if they have done stitching, that will have improved their hand-eye coordination, and they just take it on board and do it. There's no difference in the quality of what they do. Yeah. And also in our local secondary school for junior certificate, the home economics class, which would be mixed. would do a piece of embroidery as well too. So it's both. We have had men come do classes with us over the years, but it's the same thing. They want to do a project, they want to do a piece, they want to have that finished, and they come in and do that, and we don't see them again after that. But we would encourage more.
Yeah, and that's very good to hear, because I think when you hear about the art behind the embroidery, like we see in some of the thing in the museum, like where we are today, you see how much detail and beauty are behind the final work, right? And I think it's very important now, because as you know, we live in the era where our younger ones have lost the attention to details.
Yes, yeah.
And a lot of time, like, attention span is a problem. Even watching something, you can't focus for a long time. And I like the fact that it incorporates boys and girls, because it will be a nice art to bring back to life to the young generation, to take them away from the screens, right? So tell me, do you have plan? And I know you say that you don't want too much, but do you have plan to bring that art out again? Because I think it's really fascinating, and I think it's when I think about it, it can also help your mental health. You focus on that one thing, and walk me through a little bit about how we can bring it out to bring people to. It can be also a healing form, a form of healing.
Well, that's what we would say, that it is a form of healing, because you switch off for that time that you're concentrating on doing it. And also, you don't have to set a time. You can give it 10 minutes, you can give it an hour.
Okay.
And the class with the children, we find attention span is short, so we just do 1 hour with them.
Okay.
With the adults, we do 2-hour classes.
Yeah.
We've started now, we've formed a group here, Friends of Mountmellick Embroidery, and we're starting now to network with other needlework groups around the country, lace, like Carrickmacross, Limerick lace, Headford lace, that setting up network to encourage people to start doing handcrafts. Because part of Mountmellick embroidery, there's also the fringing that's attached to it is knitting. So you have to knit, there's a knitting element into it as well.
Yeah.
But also, it is something that when you've produced something yourself, and look at it. Even what I would get back out of it is how proud people are of what I've made this.
Yeah, because it's really beautiful.
And to give it as gifts. Yeah. And one of the stitchers made gifts for her friends for Christmas. And when she came back to the class after Christmas, she said one of my friends cried when I gave it to her. She was so emotional and so delighted that she had spent the time make something personal to give to her that you can keep. And that's what's nice about it. It's the personal type thing. Yeah. And I would always encourage people, use what you make. Don't hide it away. Back when we were younger, all embroideries and laces were put away. Yeah. They were delicate and they weren't to be touched, and they were only taken out on special occasions. Yeah. And I said, never do that, because what happens to those things when people die is they're thrown away. Yeah. So anything you make, if you don't give it away, use it in your house, take it out, enjoy it. And I love looking. That's what most people do at the class, is look at other people's work, look at the work. Yeah. So you get a certain amount of pleasure from looking at what people have made, and looking at what stitch they've put, how they've applied that. And enjoying, as you said, the beauty of it. Yeah, the beauty. So enjoy it. Yeah. Enjoy it while you
see some clothes or some designers have small embroidery into like their names and whatever. You can. Yeah. So it's still there in somehow. It's still there, but it's just art that is a little bit forgotten. So what do you say about that? How do we bring it back to life into a way that is becoming a very attractive art?
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's what way do you apply it?
Okay.
As you say, people use it on their clothes. So I would encourage people, say, even on a denim jacket, if you embroider onto that, you don't have to do it as in Mountmellick work or Mountmellick style. Just to do it, as long as you're stitching. I say, I'm happy as long as you're stitching, as long as you're doing something and you're getting pleasure out of it. Yeah. So if you're fighting with something or you're having difficulty with it, I just put it down, look at it another day when you're in a better mindset. But you're supposed to be getting pleasure out of it. So it's something you're doing for pleasure. So it is a hobby. Yeah. So, but to encourage people, we run the classes, the workshops, we have exhibitions, the museum is here to encourage people. Yeah. So even if people only ever do one piece and keep that and admire that. Remember, it's the same with any craft, I suppose. Yeah. It's always a struggle to find more people and to encourage people to do it. But locally here, it's part of Mountmellick's heritage. Yeah. It's in Mountmellick for the last 200 years. It has been used at times as an industry to produce it for sale. But in general, it's part of our heritage of the town. The ladies of Mountmellick have been stitching for the last 200 years, doing this form of embroidery.
Yeah.
So
I find that very interesting. I was actually going to ask you the question about the connection between the art of embroidery and the heritage. What makes it an heritage? So it was something that was very practiced here in this area of Ireland.
Yeah.
So that when you connect it with, when we talk about heritage, what is a part of us? Embroidery was part of it, is it? Yeah.
embroidery was part of it here.
And you have to, can you give us a little bit about the whole history of when it started? I know we talked a little bit about it earlier, but can you tell our guests about why is embroidering here in Mountmellick seen as a heritage for County Laois, for example?
Well, it would have been used as an industry, as a second industry for a second income to come into the home's family. So the women in the home would have embroidered, and it would have been sold to serve, to cover the extra costs in the family. So that's the way it, from 200 years ago, it has peaked and waned through our history over those times. But it was always used and called work. It was always called Mountmellick work because people did it as work. The ladies, the gentry who had money would have done it as a hobby, but the local ladies then would have done it as an extra source of income to bring into the family home. And they would have made pieces for their home, so which have been passed down through the generations. So mothers passed the stitching on to their daughters and they passed it on again. So that's the way it was back in those days. So, but it's only in the last 50 years, it's a hobby and it's done as a craft. But up to that, it was an industry and it was a source of income. So the ladies in Mountmellick, their grandparents, their great-grandparents would have stitched. So it's deeply ingrained into the local community here. And it's something that people of the town are very, very proud of.
Okay, are they still,
They are
still
very
happening,
proud,
yeah?
yes.
Oh,
they're
brilliant.
very proud that
because we don't want to lose a sense of identity, isn't it? So do you think Mountmellick was the only part of Ireland? Is there other part in Ireland that we see embroidery as a heritage, or is it just Mountmellick?
Well, Mountmellick embroidery is unique to
It's unique. Okay. All right, that's
So
interesting.
The other parts of the country, there were lace, there was Limerick lace, there was Carrickmacross lace, there's Headford lace. So they were all unique to those areas. But the difference with Mountmellick compared to them was they were European laces that designs were adapted to use locally and then took the name, whereas Mountmellick embroidery has no connection to anywhere else. It was started here. It was designed here.
How do we keep that going? Everything is so cosmopolitan now. There's people coming in, other people as well who have no real heritage. Like you, for example, would have been not really from Mountmellick, but you're not from Mountmellick because you were brought up here for a while. And how do we send a message about this art of the identity of Mountmellick to people who come in and stay? Is there something that is in place for that, or it's just the museum is available? That's it?
Yes, everybody is welcome to stitch. And we find most people who are coming from overseas to visit or to live in the area would have had some sort of stitching in their local heritage. So, and they can bring to us what they've learned, you know. And we've had a lot of people now from Eastern Europe over the last number of years through different reasons coming here, but they all have their own stitching that they would have done and their own heritage as well. So they come and learn ours, you know, so it's a sharing, really.
It's a sharing,
Yes.
Now tell me a little bit more about yourself in terms of your journey as someone who is taking people into this amazing art. I know you had your mother who was already and who gave the book and everything, but do you love it, or did you see it as a chore, or is it something that you love? Tell me about your journey in who is Dolores behind the...
I've always had an interest in craft, so at different times of the year I would do different crafts. So, but I have always had a piece of Mountmellick embroidery on the go. Because I find you don't need to have instructions, you don't need to follow a pattern. You don't need, if I'm traveling, I just pick up my piece and bring enough thread and a scissors with me and my needle, and I can stitch wherever I like. Whereas if I'm knitting, I'm following a pattern. If I'm doing patchwork, I'm following a pattern. Crochet as well, I follow a pattern. So you have to bring the pattern and you have to keep stopping and reading the pattern where you are. So there's a lot more concentration on this. So, but if I'm doing embroidery, I do it watching television. Most people do it watching TV.
That is amazing.
So I stitch and watch TV. So I can stitch and do something else because I'm not concentrating, I'm not diverting my attention away. So I'm always able to. And like I said, because it's white, I don't have to be making choices on colours. I don't have to be making, so it's white, it's the same thread, the same needle. I don't have to change anything. So most of my planning would go into what am I going to make, what's my design. And once I've that done, it's just a matter of stitching and get inspiration as I
And was your whole family involved as well? And you say your mother had you get 9 children, is it?
Yes.
And then everybody involved, or were you just the one who carried the baton?
I stayed with the Mountmellick embroidery, but all of my sisters could sew.
They could sew as well,
Yes,
yeah, that's amazing.
All were able to do it.
I find that very fascinating because I grew up, we did stitching in school, but it was just like home economic, like what we call today home economic. And then eventually other people they did other stuff like becoming a designer, tailor for different things, and using machine and all that. But it was always seen, even me growing up, it was always seen as not really a fancy thing to do. It was like, it's the elderly or the whatever, but when I look back now, as you were showing me some of the design that we saw in the museum, I don't know, I just had a sense that this could help heal mental health.
Yes.
This could definitely help. Because I think one of the biggest things in mental health today is that our mind is full of a lot of things. And that moment of just focusing on that one thing. What do you say that can we bring? Is there something that we can bring to hospital? Is there something? What do you say about the embroidery and mental health? How does it help?
I suppose it grounds you.
Okay.
You know, when you're concentrating on what you're stitching, you switch off from everything else.
Yeah.
And I suppose people, when they go to the gym, they try to switch off.
Yeah.
If you're doing exercise class, if you're doing any craft, it's an element of, I concentrate on this, so everything else is put to the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And they do say the fact of, you know, for mental health, physically doing something. So it's not like you're reading. If you're physically doing something, it's a healing process. And what I said, the pride of producing something.
Yes.
You know, and my mother used to say, you don't have to be the best in the class at doing it, as long as you've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And you've produced something that you can look back at and say, well, I did that.
Yes.
You know, I've made that. I'm able to make something physical that can survive.
Yeah.
You know, that and a lot of people would say, well, I feel grounded while I'm sitting stitching. You know, that if you were saying your head space, you're very busy, you have a lot going on, that it just brings you back down again.
Yeah.
So.
And do you think people want to do that? It would be nice
I think they do.
They do, yes, isn't it? Yeah.
There was, as you're saying, there was an element years ago, it was that old people did that.
Yeah.
This is an old people thing. This is old people. Well, I suppose I'm one of those old people now. But, you know, there was a certain element. It wasn't fashionable to be doing it. And even when I started, it wasn't fashionable. None of my friends were doing it.
Yeah.
You know, but it was something that I enjoyed. I always enjoyed working.
I would like to try again, because I done that when I was young, not as detailed as this, but it was part of school, right? I'm sitting here, it feels that sense of, it would be nice to have maybe once a month where you just sit and do something. Right, But I like the idea that you say that to bring the youth, you had to create an incentive.
Yes.
For example, like
finished product.
Mother Days or
and that evolved over time, because we used to go in and just the reason I went into the schools was my children were in school.
Yeah.
So my eldest daughter was in school, so I asked her teacher, could I go in, because it wasn't going to be easy to get her to do it at home, but in a group setting with her friends, she might do it. And then what we found was, you know, if you've got a group of 30 children, you're going to have some of them don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And they used to bring it home and say, oh, my granny wanted to look at it and I forgot to bring it back. And, you know, this was going on, or the pieces never got finished.
Yeah.
So over the years, it evolved then that we said, look, we'll do a piece that they have to have finished. So if they're doing it for their confirmation, they have to finish it. So they were motivated to finish it. They're not allowed to bring it home anymore. It has to be left in the classroom, because the ones who don't like it. But what I say to the girls, if we get 10% out of every class that we do, even if we got 10% of them that will come back to it when they're older, it's a success.
It's a success.
You know, so if you've got 30 children, if 3 of them decide in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, they'd like to do something with that, that's a success.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be something that you do for a living. It can be
just a hobby.
A hobby that helps. I'm very big onto taking people away from the screen.
Yes, yeah.
I'm very big on figure out what's the best way to make something fancy enough to take people away from the screen. We had a conversation before where you mentioned that you had people from Asia coming here. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. Over the last couple of years, we had an embroidery tutor from Japan.
Okay.
And she came here to visit 1 year. The following year, she came back then with 2 of her friends. So she spent 2 or 3 days here. She wanted to teach Mountmellick embroidery in Japan, but there were no books there that would help her or assist her in doing that. So after spending 3 or 4 days here with us, she went back to Japan, and she has recently published her own book.
Wow.
And she's using it in her classes there, and she said there's a huge interest in it.
There's a huge interest,
yes,
isn't it? I say if it goes out, it's actually going to be bigger. Now, I'm coming back into the heritage aspect of things. This is part of the heritage because this is what women used to do and all that. Let's showcase the identity. So is there other stuff that here in Mountmellick that, apart from the embroidery, that when people identify themselves, that they can say, oh yeah, this is our heritage? The other stuff?
Well, back in the 1800s, Mountmellick was known as the Little Manchester of Ireland because of the amount of industries that were there.
Okay.
So there was huge industries. This building that we're in at the moment was a malt house, and some of the beams are still here that they were brought over from America. To build this back in 1839. So there's still a lot of local heritage. There's a heritage trail in the town that depicts where the different businesses were. There was brewing, milling. Even during the famine, one of the corn mills, one of the mills in the area was turned into a corn mill to feed people during the famine times. Okay. We have a famine pot here that was found on one of the farms locally, and when a historian was there, told the people on the farm what it was. Okay. So we have it here in the museum as well, showcasing that. So there's a lot of industrial heritage in Mountmellick, and over the years things have changed, so it's now a residential town, but at the time it was predominantly Quakers. So Quakers went into industry, they didn't go into government. So, and a lot of our famous Quaker families in the town would have been the Jacobs were here, who were Jacobs Biscuits.
The biscuits,
Bewley's Teas and Coffees. They were originally a Mountmellick family that moved to Dublin and opened the tea rooms in Dublin. So Bewley's, Coffees, Teas. There was Roberts, Goodbody's. They're all kind of the main names people would be familiar with around the country. That would have settled in Mountmellick first and then branched out from there.
Okay.
So
I'm very worried, and it's good to you mention those things. We know those names now because we eat the biscuit. We don't even understand the impact that they had in the community. And I'm very worried about the way life is. It's not just here in Ireland, and even in when I go back home, I see places that were significant. It's almost like a fade away, right?
Yes.
Do you feel like heritage is losing its place in society? Do you have that sense that it's just a story of the past? Everything is just so modern now, like you say, buildings are changed.
But I think people have an interest in, I suppose people say you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've come from.
Exactly.
So you need to know the roots. People in Mountmellick are very, very proud of their heritage and very proud of and the Quakers instilled the community spirit in people, and that's still very, very strong in Mountmellick. And they call it like small town with a big heart. So there is a very strong community spirit here. This building is run by a community group, a voluntary community group that started back up in the 80s when there was a really bad recession in Ireland. And they've developed this campus now into a complete hub for the town. There's over 100 people working in this campus, and it's all run by a voluntary organisation.
Okay. And what can be done to keep heritage? I'm very big on keeping the preserving the identity of an area. So what do you think can be done? Is there enough done to keep that sense of, so that the youth see it, right? Like, I'm very proud of my own heritage, even though I'm live here in Ireland, I'm still proud of the fact that I'm, and I can easily, even though, just like you say, things have changed in the buildings and stuff, I still want to believe that government needs to do more to hold on to that. So what do you think can be done in this, especially in the sense of embroidery or whatever we see here, to keep or to preserve that sense of heritage? So everybody coming in have to know this is who we are first, as opposed to settling in and assuming things, because I think it's key.
It is, yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
The government need to encourage that.
Yes.
And I think as well too, if your children grow up seeing you volunteering,
okay.
you know, we volunteer to go into the school, so we tell the children, we're giving you our time. So I think if children grow up seeing that, they want to replicate it themselves in their life. At some stage in their life, they might be in a position that they want to give back something.
Yeah.
But the opportunity has to be there for them to do that as well.
And to be aware.
So that's where the government come in. It's like giving grant funding to local community groups to do that, to encourage that and to drive that. Because local communities develop their own areas. You know, it's not, the government don't come in and develop the area, but if they give the resources to the local groups, they will develop it and they will draw on that and build. So,
and do you think that's happening or is dying away? Is it a priority?
I don't know. I suppose the last few years, things have changed all over the country.
All over the world.
All over the world, things have changed. But I suppose if you go back through history, there's always been highs and lows and highs and lows. And so where do you go if you're down? You can only go up.
Yeah,
you know.
I'm thinking as well, maybe bringing back the information of what's going on into the school, the history.
Yeah.
So I grew up learning about the French history, which was ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah.
It took me a while now to reinforce it in my house for children to learn about our Cameroonian history. And then I see here in Ireland as well that now it's becoming a little bit bigger. People want to know. I think it's important for mental health to get that sense of back where we are, isn't it? Yeah. Where we are from, really.
And I think part of COVID, I think it woke up in a lot of people that we need to stop, slow down and look at what's around us.
Thank you.
And what's here.
I'm glad you say that.
And I think people are starting to do that. I think people tend to knock younger generations all the time. People complain that younger people aren't doing these crafts. And why aren't they doing them? It's because we're responsible.
And they're not aware.
Yes, they're not aware, but you can't assume, you can't blame children for what they're doing if it's the adults that are controlling.
Showing the example, Yes. And I believe that history needs to come back because if people hear about the history of the embroidery, it will bring an interest to it, for example.
But it's saying, oh, children don't do this, children only want screens. Children only want screens because that's what we give them. You know, if we give them an alternative, they're happy. So you have to give the alternatives. We have to spend the time. You know, we can't expect schools to be doing everything. Schools don't teach craft anymore because their curriculum has changed. But that doesn't mean that they don't get taught. So they should be taught in other areas. So maybe the libraries or other groups could start encouraging. Children love to learn. So you can.
Or maybe having trips to places like this.
The local schools always would bring the children here.
And to learn about it.
To local. But
it's been an amazing conversation so far. I really like what you guys are doing here. So where do people find you? If you want to know a little bit more about embroidering, how do they go?
There is a local website here for it's Mountmellick Museum. .com. And they give local heritages on that and the local history of the town and of the museum and opening hours and probably the best place.
And then you have an Instagram page, I think. And
I have an Instagram page, just Dolores Dempsey.
I saw Facebook as well.
And Facebook, exactly. Dolores Dempsey.
Thank you so much for giving us this time today and giving us the tour to the Mountmellick Embroidery and Heritage Museum. It's been a good time, and I think what is important is to remember that heritage is who we are, and also the art of embroidery is really fascinating. So I probably would encourage people to come and have a look if they want. And we are located in the heart of the Midland in Ireland. And when you're passing to go to Kerry, stop in Mountmellick because I know most people go to the south. And thanks for having us on the GSTV. Thank you, everyone, and it's been a good time. And we'll see you soon for our next episode. Thank you. Bye bye.